Kidversations, small voices, big stories.
Hey guys, welcome back to Kidversations. I'm Kai.
And I'm Brantley. This week we're talking with someone who knows everything about nature, from the tiniest bugs to the biggest trees.
Our guest is Mr. Jeremy Stout. He's the Nature Center Manager at Steele Creek Park in Bristol, Tennessee.
We're so excited to learn about the animals, the park, and what it's like to work in the gray outdoors every day.
Welcome, Mr. Stout. Let's get started. Can you tell us about Steele Creek Park and why is it a special place?
Oh, absolutely. I'd love to, Kai. And I really appreciate you guys having me on the show. I'm excited to be here. But Steele Creek Park is such a special place. A lot of folks, even in Bristol, that's where the park is, of course, they don't realize how big it is. Steele Creek is one of the largest city parks in the state of Tennessee. It's over 2,000 acres in size. If you wanted to hike every trail in the park, you'd have to hike 25 miles. So yeah, out of that more than 2,000 acres, most of that is wilderness. So it's forest, it's lake, it's creeks, it's habitat for plants and animals.
How long have you walked at the park?
Well, this is going to show my age a little bit, but I have worked there now for over 19 years. So I started there in 2006, and I didn't know that I was going to stay there for my whole career, but pretty quickly I fell in love with the park, and especially the Nature Center. That's where I work when I'm there. It's just such a fun and engaging place, and so it has kept me more than interested.
What made you want to walk there?
You know, it happened sort of as an accident. I was in school studying science. Specifically, I was studying biology and geology, and I thought that maybe someday I might want to be like a college professor, a scientist and a teacher. And then I took a job one summer with Tennessee State Parks. I worked at a place called Roan Mountain State Park, and they were hiring a naturalist. And when I thought naturalist, I thought scientist who's outside. But when I got there, it turned out that it was a totally different kind of job. It was what was called an interpretive naturalist. That's a naturalist who leads programs and guided hikes and activities and takes the public of all ages on hikes. And truthfully, this is kind of the secret. I didn't think I wanted to do that, but I had already agreed to take the job, and I did, and I fell for it. I loved it. And at that moment, I realized that I was on a different trajectory than the one that I started on.
What's your favorite thing about being a nature center manager?
It's so unique. Sometimes people ask me, well, what does an average day at the Nature Center look like? And I say, I don't know. Almost 20 years there, I've not had an average day yet because every day really is quite different. But, even though the challenges are unique from day to day, there are some things that I get to look forward to most weeks, like engaging with the public, answering questions about Big Snappy. He's the snapping turtle that you see right when you walk in the front door, taking folks on hikes and programs. Those are the parts of the jobs that I really look forward to. I have a good time doing that.
What is the difference between your job and a park ranger?
That's a good question. There's a lot in common with my job and park rangers. In some ways, I do a lot of the same things that park rangers do, but the biggest difference is that most park rangers are law enforcement officers, so they're actual police officers, and me and my staff at the Nature Center, we are not. We just get to be naturalists without having to also be cops.
What kinds of things can visitors do whenever they come to the park?
Oh, wow. There is so much to do at Steele Creek Park. And even if you're not the most nature-oriented person in the world, I hope you are. You should be, because nature is awesome and fun and cool. But we've got stuff for everybody. We really do. You don't have to take a 10-mile hike in the park. You could take a stroll. Some of our trails are even ADA accessible, so even folks in wheelchairs can enjoy some of our hiking trails. But we've also got picnic shelters and playgrounds and soccer fields. And in the warm months, we have a splash pad and the miniature train and the paddle boats, places to picnic. There is just no shortage of fun to be had at Steele Creek Park.
What is something most people don't know about Steele Creek?
Wow, really, the most common misconception that we get to dispel is really the size of the park. Most folks at the park, they think of the multi-use area. That's the mode areas where the nature center and all the recreational activities are. That's only about 10% of the overall park land. So a lot of people don't realize that the park really is huge and that you would have to walk 15 miles to walk all the way around the park. You can see it from wherever you are in Bristol, just about. You can look and find Steele Creek Park on some horizon. And even a lot of our lifelong Bristolians don't realize just how immense it is.
So what kind of animals live at the park, and which one's your favorite?
Oh boy, that's an impossibly hard question. I have a lot of favorites, and if you ask me different times, then I might give you different answers.
What's your top 5?
Okay, I'll give you a handful to choose from. Steele Creek is home to a lot of rare and what are called endemic wildlife. That's species that really only live in the southern Appalachians and nowhere else in the whole world. So that makes it pretty special. Yeah, sure, in 2,000 acres of park, we've got plenty of deer and raccoons and squirrels and chipmunks and things like that. And I love those critters, I do. But we've also got a fish called the Tennessee dace. That's a rare species in Tennessee. It only lives in the headwaters of a few rivers and nowhere else in the world. And Steele Creek Park is the largest population of that species in the whole world. We've also got some endangered species of plants and shrubs. We've got a huge amount of salamander diversity. Those are some of my favorites. But to my favorite critters, and I'll throw in some plants in there as well. I love the American chestnuts that we have still growing in the park. I love the salamanders. I won't make a lot of friends saying this, but copperheads. Copperhead snakes are absolutely some of my favorite snakes. I think they're beautiful, and yes, they're dangerous. They're venomous. But they're also really misunderstood. They don't deserve their bad reputation. Let's put it that way.
Why don't they deserve these reputations?
Here in this area, in Northeast Tennessee, Southwest Virginia, Western North Carolina, that's the area that I think of as the Southern Appalachians. We only have 2 species of venomous snake in the whole area. A lot of people think that we have a third one. A lot of people think there are cottonmouths here in this area. There aren't. But there are the eastern copperhead, I think it's called, and then the timber rattlesnake. Those are our 2 native species of venomous snake. My whole life I've heard, oh, rattlesnakes, they'll give you a warning rattle, but a copperhead will just bite you. And I have found that to be not true at all. I have found the rattlesnakes that I've met have had pretty bad dispositions. They've been pretty grumpy immediately when I see them. And I have found that copperheads just want to stay hidden. And I think where their bad reputation comes from is that they're just invisible. Because when they're down in the leaf litter and they're so perfectly camouflaged that people just don't see them. And the copperhead strategy is to stay motionless when it's scared. When people are plodding through the woods, the copperhead just stays perfectly still. And their camouflage is so good that I think the people who think that a copperhead just bites have probably stepped on it or kicked it. And they had no idea that it was even there to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have animals that stay inside the nature center?
We do. So we have what we call animal ambassadors. Inside the nature center, we have non-releasable turtles, fish, and amphibians. That's pretty much, and other reptiles. So we've got snakes, Big Snappy, the turtle that I mentioned earlier, but he's also got some other turtle species that share the aquarium island where he lives. We've got a couple of box turtles, an American toad, he's fun. And those are all animals that are non-releasable. So some of them started as wild animals, but now they have to live with us for the rest of their lives.
Do you take care of hurt or rescued animals?
No, that's a great question. I'm glad you asked it because a lot of people will call us, or sometimes they'll even bring us orphaned or injured wildlife, and that is not what we do. So our 3 big action verbs at the Nature Center is that we engage in research, education, and conservation. So those are the three important parts of our job. And there are some places locally that will do injured wildlife rehab, but that's not us.
What is one of the coolest or rarest animals you've ever seen?
Oh boy, that is a tough question to answer. So we have had at the park, maybe the rarest visitor that was ever there. We had a Eurasian widgeon, which is a kind of duck. And as the name suggests, Eurasia, they don't live around here most of the time. But sometimes when they're migratory, they'll get blown off course and they can end up way outside of their usual range. We've had several bird species that we did not expect. So like black and surf scoters, that's another kind of duck that we did not expect to see at the park, but they've been there. We'll also get great egrets sometimes, big white birds that'll sometimes show up in huge numbers at the park. Um, and then we also had a few records of a species called a great white heron. And that's an endangered species. It doesn't live here any time of the year, but sometimes, like those other birds, when it's migrating, it'll just show up at random places. So, yeah, we've had a lot of neat bird sightings and some other things as well.
So what does the park look like throughout the seasons?
One thing that is unique about the park is that it really does show all four seasons beautifully, just beautifully. You know, right now things are moving into the browns of winter, and pretty early, though, that won't last long before we start getting some of those wildflowers that'll start to bloom early in spring. There are summertime pictures that I've taken in the park that look like just an absolute jungle. In fact, some of these pictures I'll show folks and they don't even think it's around here. They think it's some tropical rainforest. But the summertime is just so green. And then, of course, the Southern Appalachians are known for its fall. You know, the fall colors. People come from all over the world.
So which one is your favorite season?
Oh, boy. Can I pick four?
No.
Okay, so I have to pick one. If I had to pick a favorite season, it would probably be fall. I love the color. I love that you get the mix of in the early fall, it's still warm and there's a lot of green, but then in the late fall, you get the cold temperatures and you get stuff starting to go to sleep. I don't know. I think fall is beautiful and it's comfortable and you kind of get a little bit of everything in that one season.
So how many people visit the park each year?
So we have over 200,000 park visitors that will show up each year. The Nature Center will usually have about 25,000 visitors each year. And so that's the folks that walk in the front door and also take advantage of our programs and activities.
So how many people might visit the park a day?
So it really depends on the season. So we have, June is our busiest month, and that makes sense because all the stuff is open, the train and the paddle boats and all that stuff, and it's also warm and kids are out of school. So June is definitely our busiest park month, and we can have a few thousand park visitors in a single day. It'll get pretty darn busy. But then we'll also see spikes of visitors that'll show up in, especially in winter days where it's been cold, and then sometimes you'll get that kind of warm day or sunny day in the winter. Some days those will be really, really busy because people have been cooped up, and then they have an opportunity to get outside and they take it. So, yeah, we could be busy on almost any day of the year.
Does the park do any projects to protect the animals or the environment?
We have those three action verbs. We research, we educate, and we conserve. So that conservation can take a lot of different forms. We will do everything from what's called invasive species management. A lot of plants and animals that live here in North America now don't actually belong here. They were brought from other parts of the world, either intentionally or in many cases accidentally. And so there's a little invasive insect called the hemlock woolly adelgid that attacks hemlock trees. And hemlocks are an important tree species because they create whole habitats called hemlock forest. And so we treat for hemlock woolly adelgid to save our hemlock trees. We also pull an invasive plant called garlic mustard that was brought here originally as a food plant from Europe. but it's threatening one of our native butterfly species with extinction. So we pull garlic mustard when we find it, but also species like Japanese knotweed and European privet. Those are all species that we have to manage and try to get rid of in the park so it doesn't damage our native park wildlife.
If someone wants to learn more about nature, what's an easy way to begin?
Yeah, so there are luckily a lot of great websites and online resources to study nature, but what I would recommend folks do is get out into nature and experience it directly. Your local parks, museums, and nature centers. If you're in the Bristol area, definitely come see the Nature Center at Steele Creek Park. We're open 361 days a year. But wherever you're listening or viewing from, there are parklands and nature centers and museums nearby that you should explore.
So how could other kids take care of their neighborhoods?
That's one thing that we all have a responsibility to do is to remember that we share this world with each other. So it's important that we're good neighbors to our fellow humans, but we also share this world with plants and animals. And we owe it to everything and to ourselves to take care of this world so that it's healthy, not just for us, but for the plants and the animals and the people that come after us. So what I always recommend folks do is to learn ways that they can help their local environments, whether that is in their neighborhoods, in their own backyards, providing food and water sources, nectar sources for butterflies and other pollinators. Keeping a shallow dish of water outside doesn't just help neighborhood cats and dogs, it's good for wildlife as well. Cover sources, places for wildlife to hide. Those are all things that you could just add to your backyard that could provide some of the basic needs that plants and animals need, our native species, that we can give them a little bit of a boost right in our own spaces.
So how can people make sure they're being respectful when visiting parks or trails?
So there's a really great program out there that's called Leave No Trace. And leave no trace principles are vitally important when we're visiting nature spaces because sometimes we can have impacts to the land that we don't even think of as being harmful in some way. Sometimes just moving off of a muddy section of trail and walking around the section of trail, sometimes that can cause a negative impact to the landscape. So obviously not littering, packing anything out that you took in with you, making sure to not mark on trees or to carve initials into them. And better yet, if you can even find, where other folks have not played by the rules, if you find litter and you can safely pick that up and pack it out with yourself, leaving the park a little bit better than you find it is something that if we all did, then we would have a world that had no problems with its natural spaces.
What happens when people litter or harm nature? How does that affect wildlife?
There are a lot of threats to wildlife worldwide right now, and so that includes at Steele Creek Park. Most of the threats to wildlife are things like habitat destruction or degradation. Some species are over-harvested because we eat them or we use them for other sources. There are just all sorts of problems facing all sorts of species. And so even just a simple thing like what we have at the park, far and away, one of the worst litter items is unclaimed fishing line. Everybody has had the problem where they're fishing and they accidentally get their line stuck on a branch, and so they have no choice but to cut that line. But what they don't realize is that hook and that lure and that bait is still in the water forever, even after they've cut that line. And so a fish or a turtle may be attracted to the bait and be hooked underwater. There's nobody to reel that turtle in anymore. So that's without a doubt one of the most destructive pieces of litter that we have in the park is fishing line and tackle.
So how could you prevent that?
So the best thing that you can do is if you're a fisherman or a fisherwoman to to make sure you're in the right place to start with. You know, if you're going to be casting in places where you can get your line hung, then maybe you ought to be somewhere else, or learn the tricks of the trade to get your line unstuck, so you're not cutting it every time it gets stuck in the water. But then if you have no choice, your line does break or you have to cut it. Most parks, there are people that you can go report that to and say, hey, I had to cut my line and there's a hook in the water. And so sometimes, even at the Nature Center, we can go reclaim that for folks. But yeah, not leaving it behind is one of the best things that you can do to start with.
What is one small thing everyone could do to help the earth?
If everyone was just more conscious about their effects to the land, whether it be, while they hike in the woods or as they apply chemicals and pesticides in their own yards and in their own lives. If we all just thought about what are the impacts of what I'm doing, if we are just more mindful and conscientious about everything that we do, then that is a simple thing that will start to manifest in all kinds of amazing ways. And it's not only good for nature, it's kind of selfish too. It can be good for us. So the things that the ways that we treat our own lawns and our own yards, and the ways that we interact with our food resources and the food that we buy and that we choose to put into our bodies, all of those things have direct either benefits or costs to the world and the planet that we live on. And if we're just thinking about those things, then we're more likely to make positive choices.
Somebody told me there was a black squirrel that lived at the park. Is that true?
A black squirrel at Steele Creek Park? Yes, there was. And actually, it wasn't just one. There were several. There was a whole population. So the species that it was, and this is going to sound funny, it was the species called gray squirrel. But these squirrels that we had were not gray. They were, in fact, jet black. And so that's something that's called melanism in nature. Almost any species can either be black or white, even though its natural color may be something else. And so what was pretty neat, for several years, we had a population of black squirrels in Steele Creek Park. But the sad thing is that I've not seen one in several years. So I think that they may not be there anymore, but they could be.
So what do you think happened to the squirrels?
The reason that they were black to start with is because they had just a genetic mutation. And so that gives me hope that even though we may not see any now, those genes could still be alive in the gray squirrels that are there. So we may have black squirrels again. But if you think about why most animals are patterned the way they are, many times it's to hide from predators. And gray squirrels, that's definitely the case. They pretty closely match the color of the trees and the forest and the leaf litter. The areas where they are, they don't stand out. And I wonder if maybe those black squirrels, because they were so noticeable to us, they might have been more noticeable to predators as well. And so things like hawks and other predators that would feed on those squirrels maybe picked them off a little bit more easy. I hope that's not the case. I hope they just, lived their natural lives and, went into the great beyond of old age and peacefully and in their sleep and all that. But they likely were eaten, would be my guess.
For the people watching, what would you recommend for them to do at Steele Creek Park?
What I would recommend all of our visitors do is learn what's available on any given day. If you're going to make a trip to the park, check to see if there are programs happening. Check to see the schedule for the train and the amusements. We wouldn't want anybody to come make a visit to the park and the thing that they want to do may not be open or running or operating that day. That's what I would invite everyone to do, is to ask themselves, what is it that they want to get out of their park experience, and then put together ways to make that happen.
Are there any events coming up?
There may be a few programs and activities happening around the holidays. So we've got our annual winter greenery hike that we usually do around Thanksgiving or sometimes the first week of December. This year it's on Black Friday. So our winter greenery walk, we go find a Christmas tree for the nature center and bring it back, and we see the few things that are still green and photosynthesizing even in the winter months. And we have hot apple cider and snacks and cookies, and we kind of make it sort of a fun holiday event. But yeah, there will be things happening year round. We do programs, hikes, seminars, workshops, and then all kinds of park stuff that'll be happening over the next few months.
So how many people do usually come to these events?
It depends. So some of just last month in October, we had our wildlife weekend event. We had probably over 200 people over the course of a day and a half that came to interact with our programs and exhibitors that we had that day. But then for most of our guided hikes and activities, there may only be maybe 8 or 10 folks that show up to those and everything in between.
What is an activity that people went to the most?
Some of our most popular activities are a lot of times we'll do an edible and medicinal plants hike. And a lot of people are really interested in edible and medicinal plants. That's seeing a real kind of resurgence right now. And so whenever we do that program, it's pretty common for there to be 30 or 40 or 50 people show up for a nature hike, which, you can have too many people on a guided hike. It's kind of hard to keep up with that many folks.
Has it ever happened though? Too many people?
It sure has, yeah.
Oh.
Which we have to get creative when that happens. We've had programs that we had so many people show up to, we would split it in half, and so we would have a couple of naturalists take half the group out and go different directions and that kind of thing. We have to get creative sometimes.
Is there any camping area, and can you camp at night?
No, so for all of the things that we offer at the park, it is a day use park only. So our park hours are 9 to 9, 365 days a year. We have had some overnight programs a few times in the past, but those are kind of special use type things and are not the usual. We don't have a campground.
Why don't you have any activities at night? Is it dangerous to be there at night?
So we do have we do some programs at night in the park. We've done owl prowls and we've done bioluminescence hikes where we go look for things that glow in the dark at night. Generally speaking, it's really quite safe to be in the park any time of day or night. But because our park rules are set by our city council, that we just have to abide by those rules. And if we're going to be in the park after hours, then even us that work there, we have to go get permission from our city council to do that.
If you weren't working in nature, what would you do?
I'm so glad I chose the path that I ended up being on. But if I weren't doing anything like this, if I weren't working in a museum or a university or a nature center, then I would probably be a chef because I love to cook and I love to eat. And I don't know, I always thought maybe working in a restaurant might be fun.
Do you have any other hobbies?
So I definitely do a lot of cooking. And I especially love to do cast iron cooking. I'm really proud of my cast iron pan and skillet collection that I've got. But I also do a lot of the things in my personal time that I do at work. So I do a lot of hiking. I do some backpacking where you go on multi-day hiking trips and you actually camp in nature. We're very fortunate in this area to have the Appalachian Trail that moves through, so I spend a lot of time on it. But I also love to go to museums in other parts of the country and even the world.
Do you have any other information you would like to share with our audience?
Yeah, definitely. So I would invite anyone to check out the programs and activities that we have going on at the park. We do offer programs year round. Even in the wintertime, even when it's bitter cold, and the park is open every day of the year, and the Nature Center is open almost every day of the year.
Mr. Stout, thank you so much for coming and teaching us about the park. It sounds like such a cool place to visit.
Well, it is, and I appreciate you guys having me on today, and I hope you'll come visit the Nature Center very soon.
Yes, we learned so much about animals, nature, and how we can protect our environment.
Well, I'm glad to hear it, and I hope to see both you guys soon.
If you haven't been to Steele Creek Park, make sure you check it out. It is full of amazing things to discover.
Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Kidversations. Bye!
Kidversations, small voices, big stories.